Hey, y'all. Nicole Roberts Jones here, and welcome to another episode of the Meaningful Work Podcast, a time I connect with you to talk all things finding meaning and fulfillment in the work you do, which actually leads to a fulfilling life. Now, listen. Those of you that are here on YouTube, you always see me dancing at the beginning. I don't know why I start dancing off of the intro song and forget that I'm going to come on camera. So you always see a little bit of dancing, but I also think I'm dancing because I'm excited about today's guest. Now, this conversation is one that is fundamentally one of the most important. Let me clear my throat. All of a sudden, I can get a frog in my throat. It's fundamentally one of the most important when we look at fulfillment in your work, and it's aligning your career with your values. So, our guest today is an expert at it. She's going to share with us why it's important, how we do it, and all the things in between. And her name is Monica Cost. Now, Monica improves the human connection by improving the human condition through her company, the Core Values Company, and through the premier women's fulfillment organization, the Good Old Girls Network. She's written a book, The Things I Used to Do to Sneeze, which helps people live more authentic lives. Through her quilted corporate career, which she left in 2014, Monica has seen the world from a variety of angles, which gives her a unique perspective when it comes to human evolution and mindset. So buckle your seatbelts because this woman goes in. Help me welcome my girl, Monica Cost. Hey, girl.
Hi. So good to
How
be
are you?
here. Thank you for having me.
Always listen, anytime that I'm going to talk anything about values, I got to bring in you because this is your jam. Listen, she knows a whole lot of other things too, but I think this is like the meat in your sandwich for those of you that eat meat, right? And if you don't eat meat, then it's tofu, right?
Yes.
So first, let's talk about what are core values. Can you define for people that probably don't even realize that they don't even know what they are because they don't know what they are?
In the way that I think about core values, because it's a term that has become popular, I think about core values in terms of esteemed or preferred ways of existing. They
Mm,
include things like communication, thoughtfulness, kindness, excellence, creativity, variety, options. So there are things and behaviors and ways of existing that fit you best so that when you can operate in those spaces, you're your most authentic self.
and I remember having a conversation with you. Who knows how long ago it was? Because I've known this woman for a while, right? And
Mhm.
you brought something to my awareness when you are in a situation. This could be a relationship too, y'all. If you're in a career, a relationship, anything, and something feels off, it's usually because it's bumping up against your values in a bad way. So, how do
Mhm.
people begin to really identify what their values are?
In those moments, so one of the first steps that I ask people to do when they're doing the value identification process is to think of your top three pet peeves. And these are things that don't just garner, you're not irritated in a minor way, but they evoke a visceral emotional reaction from you. It could be someone telling you a lie or cutting you off in traffic or not being thoughtful in their comments or judging someone else. So that happens. It causes a stir in your soul, and you may express it or you may hold it in. But when you sense that that's happening, on the other side of what I'm calling that a value confrontation, on the other side of that is the value. So somebody dropping a door on me, I value consideration. So because that would be against my values, now that I have understanding, I don't have the same reaction. But before, I might say, I might not hold the door for them the next time, or I might say, oh, you're welcome. If I
Mhm.
held the door and they didn't say thank you.
That's good. That's good. One of mine, and this is not a value, but it defines a value, is I cannot stand when people are late. So I think that probably has to do with integrity. And it took a while. I think it probably was a conversation that I had with you. Because let me tell you about Monica. She would check you in a good, loving way, though. And listen, I remember how frustrated I would get when people would be late. And I may not be nice when you show up late. But because I know that that's a value now, and that may not be the other person's value, I get to decide. Do I,
Mhm.
one, tell them, face it? Do I, two, realize I can't work with this person because they're always late? Let me tell you, my husband is always late. You can probably hear me, always late. So what I do with him is I cushion. the time. If we leaving at 5:30, I
Right.
tell him 5:15 because I know he's going to be late. So I know
Yeah.
that that is huge and that gets under my skin. And so I found ways to alter my existence. So the things I can't control, I control it, and the things I can't control, I have to let it go.
Yeah, but that's exactly right, though. It does tell you how long and in what way you can walk with someone else. Now, because of your relationship with your husband, you give him grace. So you're willing to create a workaround. There might be other relationships that don't have that foundation. And so they don't get the same level of grace, but it's the same value confrontation.
Right. So good. And what's so
Mhm.
interesting is I don't necessarily give him grace, y'all, because he don't think he's late. We could have a whole episode just on that. He would say, "I'm on time." He does more wardrobe changes than I do. But anyway, let me not get into that, right? So because he's in denial, and he can probably hear me, that he's always late is why I had to do the workaround because I tried to have a conversation. But anyway, so let's talk a little bit about this whole conversation because I think part of it is understanding and living in your authenticity, right? And your book, Things You Do, Things I Used to Do to Sneeze. Tell us what the book is
Mhm.
about, and then tell us about this whole conversation about living authentically.
So when I was in my, I don't know, early 20s, 30s, when I was in my mid 30s, I had this reckoning with myself because I lived this life and on paper it looked amazing and it was amazing, labels on the table. There was nothing wrong. It was first world problems, but there was something in the pit of my belly that still had me feeling unfulfilled, and I couldn't figure out what it was. So I listened to self-help books, I did exercises, I went to trainings, and nothing that they were speaking about was really the thing. And what I realized was that I'd been living my life so long into other people's expectations that I was so value misaligned that there was these constant value confrontations. And when you have those, it vexes your spirit to a point where you have to manage it. So some people drink it away, some people laugh it away, some people get really busy, which was what I did. You throw yourself into work to sort of quiet the noise. But eventually I decided to take a look. And once I had this realization that my life value misaligned, which I wouldn't recommend to people, flip the apple cart upside down. So aesthetically, professionally, emotionally, spiritually, financially, name it. In every area of my life, I did an overhaul in order to align my life with the values that I identified. And it takes
Mm,
a while. Identifying your values is not a test. And you can maybe find some of those where you click, 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 and they'll tell you what your values are. You have to try them on for size. You have to go out and see, are you experiencing value confrontations based upon this value? Some people will think their value is thoughtfulness, but it might be kindness. Some people might think it's, integrity, but it might be efficiency. And so you
mm,
really have to get crystal on what the value is, and how you know is that it's consistent
yeah.
across all areas, right? Because there's a difference between values, priorities, standards, and beliefs, which is a
Mm,
whole other conversation. And people sometimes get those mixed up. But really, the book follows a little bit of my own life. So I have some anecdotal stories of what's how to's to get authentic in these various areas of your life. If you're a person that starts to feel overwhelmed very quickly, I wouldn't recommend turning the apple cart upside down, but examining the areas of our lives to ensure that we are living our most authentic self. There's a peace and a confidence there that it's hard to describe it until you live it, and then there's no going back. You're not even tempted. The old ways don't even pull you that way because it's so uncomfortable over there. But that's what it is. It's about identifying your core values, defining them, and label liberation, which is huge, is taking the label off the table. When
I love
people
that.
cause value confrontations for us, we often then label the person, right? Because that visceral emotional response, it causes us to call the person a liar or to call the person inconsiderate. But the problem with labels is that they're transient and we
Mm,
don't like them, but we also then give them to other people. So there's this cycle of labeling, and we become a society of label chasers. So when you recognize, that you're going to live according to your core values because you identified them and defined them for yourself, let the labels fall where they may, right? Because my
Good.
value of consideration, if I'm being considerate in a meeting and displaying it in the way that I think, and I'm letting everybody else speak before I speak, you may call me passive. I can't control that.
Yeah.
But I'm still displaying my label in the way that is authentic to me. So maybe I'm not your tribe, or maybe I'm not the person on the team that, gets it done in the way that, but these are the things that you have to start to identify for yourself so that also when you're compromising those values and for what.
That's so good. And just thinking about, and I love the whole conversation, take the labels off the table, right? And how we label ourselves. Well, other people put labels on us too sometimes too, but then we choose, because it's our choice, to say yes to the label, right? I remember when I first got married, people kept saying, when are you gonna have kids? Now, at first I used to feel guilty that I didn't want kids, right? That's a label somebody put on me that I'm supposed to have kids. My husband has 2 phenomenal kids already, and I thought, why do I need to start again, right? But I kept feeling guilty, and after a while, I realized the reason I'm feeling guilty is because I'm allowing other people to put their label on me, and as a woman, I'm supposed to have kids.
Yeah, their expectations of what you should and shouldn't be doing. Hence my shirt. No, I shouldn't.
I love it. I
Yeah.
love I didn't see that. I love it. Right.
Yeah. Expectations they're actually not really helpful. They're a setup, right? Because depending on how tightly we're holding to the expectation, which is another part of the book, will determine how disappointed we are or what we do when that expectation isn't met. Like if I wanted to eat outside today and it rained, I probably wouldn't be that upset. Yeah. But if I thought I was about to get my dream job, that they told me it is it's in the bag, and then tomorrow they call me and tell me I don't have it, and in my head I've already created all this stuff. Well, that fall from that place is going to be a lot greater.
As you were talking, I was reminded of last weekend. I'm going to give my girlfriend Melanie Parker a shout out because she said something at an event that, when she started as an African-American woman in the C-suite, I'm not going to say the name of the company because I don't even have permission to say this, but she said it in public. So I feel like I can, and she's my girlfriend. So Melanie, forgive me if I don't have permission. But anyway, so she said that other people, non-Black people, were asking her, what do you do to fit in? How have you fit in these places? And she said, I don't try to fit in. I add in. And I thought that was so good. So she totally dissipated the label that we have to fit in. She's like, I'm coming to add. I add value. I don't need to fit.
Yeah. And again, that's an expectation, right? The expectation is that you want to try to fit in. And that, again, that's something that was placed on her, but she can return the sender. You don't have to receive any of the mail that is sent to you that doesn't belong to you.
Oh, come on, return to sender. She's dropping some. Listen, y'all ain't get these nuggets she dropping. Take the labels off the table. You said label something. Liberation. Yeah, you said label liberation. Take the labels off the table. Return to sender. And that's really what when Melanie said, I add in, I'm sure that woman was like, to return to sender. Not receiving that. That's so good. So what do you think?
That's what happens when you have your own personal standards in view. It's easy to do that.
Woo. If you have your own personal standards of view, y'all, she dropping nuggets. Listen, and I'm trying to pay attention because I don't do really well when I take a whole lot of notes when I'm trying to host because I'm busy writing. So I stopped because I'll be writing for me. So I have to watch episodes over too. So I know y'all, she is dropping nuggets so quick. I can't even catch them. So listen, what role do you think mindset plays in all of this? When you're looking at labels, when you're looking at values, you're looking at authenticity, where do you find mindset comes into play here?
It's everything. It is everything. And I'm liking mindset and mental chatter in a similar bucket because mental chatter creates mindset. And studies continue to show that 75% of our mental chatter is negative. Mm-hmm. So that means that you're trying to have a good day, right? I'm going to go to work. I'm going to go to this meeting, do whatever. And you're like, you know what? I'm going to skip breakfast, but then they have muffins in the somewhere at work. So you grab a muffin, Then you start to beat yourself up about eating the muffin because you didn't go to the gym yesterday. And now all of a sudden, this great morning that you were about to have turns into this self-deprecation. And so now your mindset, as you're entering the day, maybe you normally have a growth mindset. Maybe you normally have a positive mindset, but somehow this rabbit hole you've gone down has torn away at that. So it's a constant reset. And there's many mindsets. So people say, oh, you have to have a positive mindset. Well, what does that mean? A positive mindset when? A positive mindset how? What I think they're really trying to say is reframe your thoughts when you start to think negatively. So the reality is every moment from this point forward is a figment of our imagination. If I say, I know for sure what's going to happen in the next 5 seconds, that's a lie. I don't. Now, if I say, I think Nicole's going to ask me another question, I made that up, right? I could say, I think Nicole's going to ask me a difficult question about X. Let's say I had some scandal out there, which I don't. But let's say in my mind, I'm like, I think Nicole's going to ask me this. So now I'm starting to get upset on the inside at the thought of you asking me this question, but I haven't considered Nicole might not ask me the question. So let's balance that back out. Let's come to present.
Yeah.
She might ask me the question, I'm panicked. She might not. That feels better. So now we're at 0 again. So mindset is really just coming back to right now. Because if we're constantly borrowing that worry from the future, the price we're paying is the moment we're in, which means if I'm paying for worry and a future that hasn't happened, I can't be then focused on what it is that I'm supposed to be doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
It robs us of the moments that we're in. So mindset is important. There's a lot of sayings, and I'm not big on sayings. Everything happens for a reason. Wisdom comes with age. Like I don't believe in any of that.
Right.
I think that there's what happens. There's what happens and what doesn't happen. And we can work on what we want to happen with no guarantee that it's actually going to. So to me, that's the mindset, is the reframing of stories that I've made up for the future, coming back to present to decide what can I do in this moment to contribute to the next moments that I said that I want to have, if that makes sense.
So good. As you're talking, what's coming to my mind is a Bible verse. And I'm going to say this, and I can say the Bible verse. I'm not sure if it's Romans 12:1 or Romans 12:2. So y'all look it up because I'm doing this off the top of my head. That says, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind. So if we go to the word conformed, when we're conning ourselves, we let the labels con us, we let the people con us, we let these preconceived notions con us into the form we take. Think about it, y'all, because that's what Monica's been saying, right? Instead, if you transform, and that's really in that moment, which you just gave us tools to do, is let me stop thinking about what if she does this and what if she does that. Stop. Let me transform how I'm looking at this in this moment and really be in my full self and not be conforming to what could happen, what happened yesterday, what somebody said about me or did to me. And let me transform who I be in this moment. And I think it's so important in that moment that you understand your value so that you can reconnect. So if I use myself for an example, because I like to give examples, again, y'all, I said I hate people that are late. So if I'm frustrated, let me tell you how I used to be one of them kind of people that would tell you about yourself so fast, right? Now I try to do with love, because love is another value. And I thought, I can't just want love, I got to give it out too, right? So I thought, how could I be gracious to the person and still uphold and not let that person mess up my day because they're really late, or mess up the meeting? Because what happens is if I take on how I'm feeling in that moment, I'm funky, I'm not nice, and it messes up the entire atmosphere for the meeting I'm getting ready to run. So I'm sharing that with you because in that moment I have a choice to make. Do I let this hinder who I be, or do I just deal with that situation so maybe it doesn't happen again? And it's really hard, but it's a huge lesson. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. This stuff sparks me.
Yeah, I know.
It's also returning back to my values aren't right. They're just mine. So if we can move from that, then we can get to grace, because we are now projecting in our anger or outward frustration, right? I'm never going to like it when a person doesn't hold the door for me. I'm just
Right.
not. But am I irritated? Am I getting that same? I'm not. I'm not, because I understand that my values are mine and not theirs. They probably don't care when people hold the door for them or not either, because it's not a value for them. And that's
Mm.
okay. So now it gives me more peace and confidence because I hold doors because of what I value, not because of the applause or thank you that I'm going to get from other people. And that's a decision we have to make,
Yeah,
right?
so
Our
good.
values, we cannot adjust our values to fit the circumstances. So the reason why I wipe off the sink basin in public restrooms is because I'm considering the next person that's coming, but that's my value. I don't any longer look at the person next to me who left a wet mess on there to say they should have, or that, no, I shouldn't. No, they shouldn't. Because they know why they do what they do and they know why they don't do what they do. I just have to operate authentically from my space. And that way I won't get derailed.
Ooh, so good. So good. So if someone is disconnected from their values, right? And some of you guys may be disconnected and not think, not realize that you are. So I want to suggest that you pay attention over the next week and then come back and listen to this episode because Monica's going to give you advice. So, what would you suggest that they do to get reconnected to their values?
That's a very hopeful is not the word that I'm looking for, but I'm going to use hopeful. And then I'm going to be upset later when I think of the word that I wanted. Uh, Question in that it presupposes that most people even know what their core values are. And when you ask most people what their values are, they will say things like God, family, work.
Mm,
One, to me, those are priorities,
yeah,
not values. Because I don't
right,
know how you live out a value of family, right? You can say, I
right.
value my family, I value God, right? But you prioritize those things. Although most people, if you look at their lives, that's not it either, but we won't go there. So, what I suggest is thinking about the number of times or every time somebody vexes your spirit, and write it down, journal it. It's like a food diary. But this is a vexed spirit diary. This is how many times today I got irritated. So I put down the thing that happened, how you felt, and any impact it had on you that lingered. So
Mm,
as you're writing at the end of the day, are you getting upset all over again? Um, how did it affect the rest of your day? And then at the end of the week, you're going to have a theme of things that seem to vex your spirit. It could be 11 different scenarios, but you're going to start to see the patterns in the types of things that evoke that visceral emotional response from you. And then is for free. If you go to the corevaluecompany.com under resources, there's actually a value identification process. I'm gonna call it an assessment, but again, it's not easy. It's not overnight. You have to list your top 3 pet peeves, and then you have to review about 500 values,
mm,
and you narrow that down to 20. And then you take that 20 and then you look at the pet peeve again. And the goal is to narrow down your top 5 values based upon the things that are common in what set you off. So it's not just people not wiping off the sink basin. It's imposition of somebody in a quiet neighborhood blasting their music. That feels inconsiderate to me. But for them, it's not. And because we don't live in a values-based society and
right.
there's no law that says you can't do that, I have to settle into that person and I don't align here. And do I want to engage? How much is it worth it for me to engage on this thing?
So good. So, by the way, I'll put a link in the show notes, y'all. Those of you like, where was it? I'll put it in the show notes. It'll be below. You can click and grab it. So, as we wrap up this conversation, believe it or not, girl, time is almost up. When we look at all the yummy insight you have given us around values, around authenticity, around labels, how do we now connect that to finding fulfillment in our work? What would be the last kind of thing you want to have listeners walk away with when we look at how all those things connect to fulfillment in your career?
So when you're looking at specifically environments, so if you have a career choice that you already know you enjoy, you might be in it already. So if you're already in an organization, still look at those value confrontations that happen regularly. They could be one manager, they could be 8. It could be the culture, it could be whatever it is. Start to identify that so that you understand if where you work can be fulfilling. Because sometimes it's so value misaligned that maybe you can't quit, not a suggestion, but maybe you can find some enjoyment in the work that you do, but the environment, you're going to have to find fulfillment elsewhere.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say is if you're looking for work elsewhere, then it is really important that you identify your values so that you know walking in the door what interview questions you're going to ask of the organization. And we should still be asking to speak to associates and professionals that work in the organization to ask them, what is it that you like about being? So, because now you're listening through your filter and you're not listening through what you think a good work environment should be. Nicole's the expert on how to find the thing, right? How to turn what you do naturally into the money. That's not my thing. But once Nicole has ushered you into that space of knowing what it is that you want to do and how fulfilling the work can be, now let's talk about how fulfilling the environment can
Yes.
be. And that has to be attached to your value system.
That's so good because you could absolutely love your work, but hate where you work. Jim Collins wrote this book, Good to Great. You can be in the right seat on the wrong bus, right?
That's right.
So, and
Yep.
sometimes what's interesting is I've met so many successful women that come to me that hate their jobs and they're not even on the wrong bus, y'all. I can tell you they're in the wrong seat. They're in the wrong seat because somebody put a label on them and told them they should do this role and they have no business doing it. And I'm sharing that with you because I want you to see how all these things line up. And when we have a real conversation, let's take all the labels and what you should do and let's stop conforming to what everybody has told you, what your resume says, what your degree says, let go of all of that. What does your heart say? And when we get clear on that, not just for the role, but the environment, listen, it allows you to do work that sets your soul on fire. So, Monica, thank you for all of your insight, your brilliance, for always being the value cheerleader, right? And I'm not even cheerleader. I need to say superhero because, girl, she comes in and busts stuff up. So, is there anything that you want to say that you didn't get to say during our time together?
Yes. Can I promo the Good Old Girls Network?
Yeah, of course.
So in the professional, this is for women only. But one of the things in talking about fulfillment, it's right along with it, but it's only for women, is I launched this organization called the Good Old Girls Network, the Goggin, GOGN.com, where it is helping women to live more. So we're railing against should, have to, and external expectations. And we're examining, crystallizing the why we do everything we do, from what you put in your coffee cup to who you hang out with, to why you spend so much time with these people. If we're not having our why intact, so we're falling into other people's expectations and these what we should do, and we're railing against that. So please visit the site. And in terms of core values, identify your core values. Period. Identify them, define them. It will change your life. I promise you.
It'll change your life for the better. So thank you. And we'll put both links in the show notes, y'all. So Good Old Girls Network and the assessment will both be in the show notes. So thank you, Monica, for all you do, for always being willing to share your insight and for dropping nuggets as you always do. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
So that's it for this episode. You know what I'm going to ask you to do. Number one, share your takeaways. I know that you've got some insight. Some of you guys, listen, I've been hearing from you and you've been sharing that you listen to this podcast as driving to or from work. Get that. But come on back and give us some insight as to what you've learned in this episode, how you're going to move it forward. And then, of course, I'm going to ask you to share it. I ask you that every week, again, because other people in your network need this insight. All right. So again, thank you for joining us. I'll see you next time for another episode of the Meaningful Work Podcast.